Assalamualaikum, dear learners. Welcome to today's short video. Today we are going to learn how to frame objectives in a research study, maybe in your research paper or in your research project. So let's start. Right. So, these are a few things that we must consider before framing objectives. Number one, objectives can be framed both for quantitative and qualitative studies, though usually they are more common with quantitative studies. Right. So, before framing your research objectives, you should have a very good understanding of the targeted research area, right? The area in which you want to carry out your research for your research paper or for your project or for your thesis, right? These steps can help you a little to have better understanding of that research area in which you want to carry out your research. So first, review the literature review, like the literature review in that specific area. Suppose if you want to carry out research in English language teaching in Pakistani context, then you should have a reasonable understanding for that. Then to be more specific, if you want to work on teaching methodology, then you have to narrow down your research or review of the literature to teaching methodologies specifically in Pakistani context, right? This next step is going to be identify the research gap. Obviously, there should be some gap on which you want to carry out your research, which will you be doing for a paper or a thesis. So once again, while reviewing the literature review, you will come across this gap. Rather, you have to be critical to find out the gap. Other studies may, in some cases, may have explicitly suggested the gap. In other cases, it may be implied there. And while critically reading the research papers or research projects or theses, you can find that research gap. But finding research gap is important for your research study. Third thing, draft a statement of the problem. Before you go for your objectives, you should have very clear statement of the problem for your study. I have already shared a video on drafting a statement of the problem. So if you want to learn more about how to go for it, you can watch that video. Well, these are some of the characteristics of effective objectives. Like the first one, your objectives must be very specific and clear instead of, vague and very general and very broad. So if your research objectives are broad or general, they are not good or effective research objectives. Secondly, they should be achievable, right? Just be realistic, right? Being achievable means you can attain them within given time and resources. For example, if you are working on a research project for your study, maybe for postgraduate diploma or for your MS, then you should consider how much time do you have to complete that research project. If you have, 4 or 5 months, then the scope should be only that much broad. If you have 1 year, it can be still broader than that, but it should be achievable. It shouldn't be as if you require 5 years to complete that project, and whereas you have to complete it in 1 year only or in 6 months. So, and also ensure that you have enough resources and time to complete that particular project. Well, number three, it should be relevant to the research problem and purpose of the study. Obviously, you will have frame your research problem before you write research objectives. So your research objectives must align with your research problem. Well, if you have if you have drafted effective objectives for your research, then they will work as roadmap for the research study. They will guide you to frame your research questions. They will also guide you to which sort of research instrument you should be using, and they can even they can even give you some idea about your data analysis, right? Well, finally, align, with your objectives must align with your research questions. Actually, in most of the cases, your research questions are based on your objectives. First, you design your objective, and then on the basis of those objectives, you go for your research questions. So if your objectives are clear, achievable, relevant, you have good understanding of them, you will require less time while framing your research questions that are going to be based on the objectives. Well, these are sample research objectives. They cover both qualitative and quantitative studies. Like number one, to investigate the impact of listening practice on listening performance. It's going to be a quantitative study. Like second one, to assess the effectiveness of teaching methodology on writing performance. Third one, to explore the factors influencing a student's performance in online speaking class. Third one is more towards qualitative study. And the last one, to identify the key factors that influence content writing in Pakistani context. You can find more research objectives as you read in your area of interest, whether it is a research paper or it is a research thesis or some other type of research project. They must have framed research objectives. So do read their research objectives also to get a better idea how research objectives should be framed. Well, after you have drafted your research objectives, do the following. Share the objectives with your mentor, who can be your supervisor or a co-supervisor. You can also share them with your colleagues, with your classmates, or other experts in the field in which you are working, right? Well, discuss the objectives with them, take their input, and based on those discussion and your enhanced understanding of the research, now you can refine your objective and go for the next draft of your objectives, which definitely is going to be better than the previous draft that you had framed without consulting experts and other people in the field. Well, good luck with your research. I hope this video is going to help you in your research.